Good day, everybody. My name is Michael Schmeeckle, and you're here today on Everyone Has a Story. What's yours? Today I have Mr. Paul Madsen here to talk about his story, and I thank you for being here.
Good to be with you, Michael.
Most appreciated. So what the story is about is everybody has gone through life. Life happens. But as you've gone through life, it has been kind of mundane for you because you've gone through it. But the aspect is when someone else hears your story, they may resonate with it and give them hope and or inspire you for so much more. So today we're going to talk with Mr. Paul Madsen here. Do you prefer Paul or Mr. Madsen?
Paul,
Paul,
you know me, Paul is best.
Well, I still like to give you options.
Okay.
Because, you've done so much in your life. Let's have you tell your story, please.
Well, I don't think it's that exceptional of a life. In fact, this morning I was working on yet another new book and the foreword of it, and in it I talked about I'm just an average Joe. I mean, I reflect back. I started the book when I was at the bedside of my dying father-in-law. He almost made it to 95 years old.
Wow.
And this is about a month ago, so fairly recent, and it made me reflect and made all of us reflect. Of course, those kind of things do, right? Well, and I'm saying, gee, what was his whole life about? And and I reflected a little bit about some of those things, and then I said, well, who am I to talk about these topics? And I just said, my life benchmarks were similar to millions of people. I got an education, happened to be lucky enough to go to college, happened to be lucky enough to meet my wife there, happened to be lucky enough to have 3 great kids, lived in a good location, and we had lots of different career and occupational things, and church involvement and community involvement, and the same boring kind of stuff that millions of people have. So when you say I've had a exciting life, I'm not sure. I mean, we've had a couple of good trips in there too. Yeah, but the bottom line, Michael, is I'm not that different than most other people.
Well, that may be true, but from what I've known about you, you're an author. You have your own TV show that you run from growmedia.com, if I'm correct.
Correct.
You also do retreats for helping people who grieve and so forth, because of what you've gone through in your life, which is still my humble condolences for all the way that's happened in your life.
Sure. Well, I guess that that is a differentiator. I did, in fact, sometimes I refer. It's easier to me to read it because a little summary, if you don't mind.
Please, and I thank you very much.
This is my book, Men Grieve Too, and I say. Death is personal to me, my son's and my daughter's fiance. 9 months after the death of my 31-year-old daughter, Laura, my wife of 40 years, Lisa, also died. Our family is too familiar with hospice, ICUs, 24/7 oxygen, and all the other things that come with deaths from long-term chronic illness. And, that's kind of a gloomy Gus, Debbie Downer kind of thing to do, but it puts it in a nutshell, and it is a somewhat of a differentiator. But what I've found, Michael, is I can get into the details of that whole grief journey and all that, but I was working on a second book with a book production person, Elisa Pelto of Concierge Marketing.
Cool.
And do you know her? No? Okay.
No,
She produces books for literally over 1,000 times. Wow. If you have a book inside of you and you have it on a cocktail napkin or in your head, she'll take it from that point and get it to the Amazon marketplace.
That's cool.
Like magic.
Very cool.
Not for free, but that's what she does. Anyway, I was talking to her, Lisa Pelto, and about my second book. First one's Men Grieve Too.
Yes.
And the second one, I said, well, she said, what do you want it to be on or whatever, and what do you want it to be about? And we kind of agreed that I don't want to be the grief guy.
Yes,
I don't be known as Grief Gus or whatever, and that's not who I want to be. Even though we're still on the grief journey, my sons and I, and even you knew my daughter, and we're good friends with her, and so We all travel that, right?
She was an amazing light indeed.
Yeah, she was a light. Yeah, she was a handful, in a good way. In a good way.
Yes.
So, and the point is, I just wanted to not be stuck in that. I go to a lot of grief support groups, both for my research, Michael, and for my own benefit.
Yes.
And there, I know I even heard of one story where, and I don't know if it's true, where a woman told me about a guy she knows who lost his wife 6 years ago, and this guy still has all his wife's clothes in the closet where they go, and he still licenses her car, even though he doesn't need 2 cars, and you know, all that kind of thing. Now, again, I don't know if the story is true. I can't back it up, but that would be someone who's stuck in their grief.
That is true.
And in my book, I talk about different kinds of grief. An example would be, for instance, Michael, where the typical men, you know, a man, you know, when we go to sweep our kitchen, and maybe if you have a freestanding rug in the middle or something, you sweep and sweep, put it in the dustpan, and there's always that little bit of dust left over, right? Mm-hmm. And what do you do with that little bit of dust? Sometimes you lift up that rug and sweep it under the rug, right?
Could be.
Some people don't, but that's a stereotype, and I ran with it. And men could do that. You know, instead of confronting their grief,
yes,
they can say, you know, it never happened. I'm fine, whatever. Don't worry about it. Move on. Next. Rub some dirt on it. All that kind of thing. So that's kind of ignoring it.
Yes.
I mean, I know you've been through serious grief in your life and a grief journey.
Yes, I have.
Did you find yourself doing any of that kind of denial kind of thing?
No, I went more into, was given the opportunity to have time.
Okay.
About 14 months of it, I went to a deep despair, mm-hmm, to the point of, there's other complications behind that. I don't want to go into that. But the aspect when, after the 14th month, I basically said, I'm done fighting, I'm done here, I'm here for you. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? Talking to the divine, so where do I want to be? Yeah. And basically,
so you kind of turned a corner, so to speak.
Yes.
It was less about you and more about what else is out there.
Yep. So I decided to actually live my life in honor of my Stacy.
Perfect.
And then go from
and
there.
You lost your wife, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that or not.
Yep.
But
a little over 10 years ago.
Wow. Okay, that long. And you know, you're like all of us. You still think about it. One of my favorite quotations in the book is from a woman named Colleen. I did not make this up, but I read it from her, and she said, you know, grief is always with you. Mm-hmm. You just get used to it.
Yes.
Isn't that profound? It's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I read a dozen books on grief and heaven and death and all this kind of thing, and it's just this woman down the street, you know, mm-hmm, came up with this in a photocopied, loose-bound collection of writings. Yep. Nothing formal and fancy, and I hang on that all the time.
Yes.
Because as you know, one of my triggers is I go to the grocery store, and I did the shopping and such for my wife for 4 years. She was in a wheelchair, and it was just easier for me to run the house that way. And the first time, the backup is that she always wanted avocados. She liked avocados, and I could take them or leave them, but I always bought them for her. And of course, after all the food from the funerals and the gift cards and the attention and people taking you out to eat and all this kind of stuff, after all that stuff subsides, what do you have to do? Eventually, got to go to the grocery store.
Yes, yes.
Which I did, and the first time I went past those avocados, that big rack of avocados, what do you think I did?
Broke down and cried.
Absolutely. I'm leaning over the grocery cart, crying, tears going through the holes on the ground. I'm sure the other patrons at the grocery store thought I was having a heart attack or something.
Could have been.
Yeah, I don't know, but got through it somehow, and probably did not buy avocados. Don't want them around.
You might have.
Well, I don't remember. but the second time, similar reaction, not quite as emotional. Third time, still a reaction. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, every time I go buy the gall darn avocados, guess what I think of? Mm-hmm. And you know, those triggers are all around us. In fact, I write in my book about what I call tears moments, and T stands, it's an acronym, T stands for triggers. You know, we have them. Do you have any triggers that still hit you after 10 years?
Every once in a while.
Yeah?
Every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't imagine that most people wouldn't. I mean, you know, 10 years is a long time, but I don't know. I don't want to be that guy that's got registering the car 6 years later.
Well, yeah, like for myself, I went through and, how can I say, went through the grief aspect of it, and it wasn't until just recently, within the last 2-3 years, I finally decided it was time to add myself to my own life.
Interesting.
Because I've been living in honor of my Stacy for all these years, and I've been blessed with so many amazing people I've met along the way, from business to personal, and like from Casey Miller helping me out with getting my life coaching, from my learning to get my business started up in 2015, and all that stuff moving forward to help so many other people with the aspect, and even through the life coaching and empowerment coaching I've been doing, and energy healing, helping them and others to go through grief and their own personal stuff. Each of us have our own way of how we deal with things.
Well, and I talk about that in Men Grieve too also, is that,
very
you know, we can, I mean, I talk about how the calm after the storm.
Yes.
You know, I won the grief lottery, Michael. I did. I had friends, relatives, neighbors, strangers sending me things, people sending me stuff anonymously. Somebody, you know, Laura, this is what gets me every time. Someone sent it was around Christmas time. She died in August, and they sent me a beautiful porcelain angel. No return address. I have no idea. Thank you, whoever it was. It was touching, and it was just special. Anyways, strangers, friends, relatives, neighbors. My neighbors mulched my yard. I mean, I won the grief lottery, okay? Gift cards, gift food, freezer full of food, everything. And but after a while, that all, what does it do? Returns to normal, right? And it does for you, it did for me. And at that point, this is weeks later, the adrenaline's wearing off. And you're kind of going back to, what's going on here? You know, I got through that busyness, got through that hurricane, that storm or whatever, and now it's the calm after the storm.
Correct. And
I went into isolation mode, and that's like what happened. I lost my daughter, lost my wife. I said, and the enormity of it hit me, and so I'm wanting. It was a chair very similar to this. I own a different color, but I call it my brown chair mode. I went into my isolation. I just wanted to sit in my brown chair. I didn't want to talk to you. I didn't want to talk to friends. I didn't want to talk to people at work or business or whatever. I just wanted to isolate. I just wanted to remove myself from all that stuff and not have to answer questions. Paul, how are you doing? How are you doing today? Which is the worst one, because they know when they ask it that way. But it is a good one, folks. Ask, how are you doing today? Because I really feel that that's a differentiator. Anyway, I didn't want to pick those scabs off of the wounds every time and go over it all again. I just want to isolate. And what do people do when they isolate? They could try to mask their pain. Any number of ways to mask their pain. I mean, there's drugs, tobacco, alcohol, promiscuity, pornography, isolation, relocation, denial of friends, change your church, change your home, any number of things that you can do.
Correct.
Do you know what I did?
What'd you do?
I became a 2-pack a day guy. 2 packs a day, not what you think. If I had a visual, I'd hold up the 2 packs of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Did you know a guy that's lost his daughter and his wife within 9 months of time could eat 2 packs of Kraft macaroni and cheese at one sitting? It's possible. And actually happened more than once.
What was your favorite flavor of that?
Oh, just the generic, the standard kind. I wasn't that particular. Unfortunately, I still love mac and cheese. However, that's not a good way to continue. Fortunately, I pulled out of that. So, anyway, that was the way I dealt with my masking of it. And you're right. You have to jump back into your life, and that's where I was going with it. Is the idea that you have to. Somewhere, and you made this turn, this corner, you sound like, somehow you have to figure out your life's not just about you. It's about somebody else, isn't it?
Correct.
And I was starting to journal and write some stuff down. Lisa died in May, and in August, again, those Grief Lottery friends, they pulled me out on the bicycle trail with them, and we went and we were having margaritas afterwards at a famous local place, and there's a hint, they were $1, in case you know the market. And it just came out that I said, you know, I'm journaling, I'm writing, and they encouraged me to come up with a book, Men Grieve Too. And in that, so I'm writing it, and I'm aware of two different women at my church, known them for decades, really, and both of them lost their husband. These are women probably in their 80s, 70s or 80s, late 70s, and I'm at a point in the book where I said, well, you know, maybe I should eat my own dog food. Maybe I should say, do something about not just saying that we got to live for others, and we don't focus just on ourselves. We have to live for others. And so I did. And this is nothing major. I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just hopefully inspiration for anybody who's in a funk.
Correct.
What am I going to say? Do something for someone else. It's as simple as I went to the grocery store, picked out two, I don't know, $11 or $12 prepackaged, you know, fresh food lunches. All they need to do is put it in the oven, not a TV dinner, real food. And I had their addresses, and I brought one to each one of them.
That's
and
awesome.
you know, and every time they see me at church, they give me hugs, and just, you know, it's such a tiny act of simple thing that we can do for other people.
Kindness.
We overthink it. You know, I think sometimes people leave the grieving person alone, Michael, because they don't know, I don't know what to do. Don't make an appointment.
Correct.
I had those friends with a bicycle. They just came by one night and brought a bunch of food. You know, I was not expecting it. Like, what are you doing here? Oh, come on in. Let's, you know, I didn't have an appointment.
Yes.
Didn't have it set it all up ahead of time. Didn't do the food chain on the internet or whatever, meal train or whatever they call those things.
Kind of like what we used to do as kids.
What's that?
It's kind of like what we used to do as kids. Just stop over.
Yeah, well, and so I didn't go into those ladies' houses. I just gave them the stuff, and they just, you know, somebody, and this was not within 6 weeks of their husband's death.
Correct.
This was probably before 6 months, but it was after the calm, after the storm.
Correct.
I knew exactly what they were feeling.
Yes.
You feel like, okay, we had a life, we had a death, we have the celebration of life, we have the support afterwards,
Correct.
and we have the quiet.
Yes.
And I wanted to get to them during the quiet to know they hadn't been forgotten about.
That was good. Very good.
And again, I don't say that because I'm a good person. I don't mean that at all. I just say that to inspire people to do some little thing for others.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, easily.
Usually.
No, easily. The aspect is, let's say, for example, have you ever had a paper cut?
Yes.
Have you had 1,000 paper cuts at once?
Oh, no, that would be death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Exactly. So the details matter.
Right.
Small details over time can be a powerful healing opportunity.
Good.
Just like kindness is lending someone else your strength and not pointing out someone's weakness.
Right, right. Yeah, and I agree with that a lot because, you know, this next book is about gratitude itself.
Yes.
And one of the quotes I'm using, I don't remember where I heard it, but is imagine the peace that you have in your life if you don't have to prove someone wrong.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
If I, you know, you believe this kind of thing and whatever energy healing or whatever, and I don't have to prove you wrong.
Correct.
Right? I just can, you know, that's Michael.
Correct.
That may not be me or it may be me. Correct. My daughter was into that stuff too, and so that's wonderful. The point is that it's really relieving, maybe even disease avoiding, if in fact we just don't have to prove each other wrong.
As I like to talk to a friend of mine a few months ago, is that we can we can agree to disagree and still be friends.
Right.
That's great.
And I have people politically who disagree with me, and I don't know if that's true, so we don't even bring it up. But I know if we brought it up, they might not be my friend anymore, and I don't want to risk the friendship, so I don't bring it up. But yeah, let's still coexist. Too small a world, as you and I know, too short of a life.
Correct, correct.
Absolutely.
So we got about maybe 3 or 4 minutes left here. And is there anything else you want to talk about, or is there anything I've not asked? Or?
Well, the motive behind writing the Men Grieve 2 book was that having the double whammy type of thing, I did frequent the grief groups often. And at one of them, I made a comment to the group or something, and somebody thought it was funny. But after the group, a lady, I call her Marge, I don't know her real name, came up to me, and she had lost her husband much more recently than I had lost my wife. And so she was fresh, as they call it. And she melted down. She just totally melted down on me in tears and cried and loud and everything. And I, uncharacteristically, guess what I did? I listened.
Nice. Yes.
I just listened. And, she got done with her thing, and I, again, still just listened. And when she got done, she just thanked me and hugged me and loved me up about what I had done and how great I was. And I didn't do anything. I was in the right place at the right time, basically. But it made an impact on me. It's like, that felt really good to try to help people. Yes. And I said, I'd written a couple other books, and mostly on career guidance and things like that. And I said, I'm going to go write a book on grief. And I got home and I researched that. Guess what? The world does not need another book on grief. About 3,000 or 4,000 of them out there, How do you differentiate? I went back to the grief groups later, and I noticed the trend. I said, at this one group, there's about 40, 45 women and about 8 guys. I went on a different grief group. This one had 20 women and about 5 or 6 guys. And I started studying that. And then I said, well, maybe that's my angle. And in fact, it became that.
Very interesting.
So yeah, that's how the men deal with it a lot differently in most cases, not in all cases,
yes, but
in most cases. So that's kind of the history of how that book became in. And then I have I'm honored to be the keynote speaker at Endless Journey Hospice's gala coming up.
They are amazing, by the way.
They are amazing. On April 21. Do you have some experience with them?
Yes, I've had. I was doing energy healing and life coaching with them about 6 years ago.
Oh, okay. And they and that's pretty early in their history. They sat right here a couple weeks ago when we did a show.
Awesome.
It's coming up real soon. At any rate, yeah, they do all sorts of non-traditional stuff in addition to the traditional hospice. Correct. So that's what makes them completely different.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, they heard me speak somewhere at the Omaha Empowerment Breakfast, which you're familiar with, and asked me to coffee afterwards. I said, sure, whatever. I'll go to coffee with anybody. And at that, they asked me to be their keynote speaker at their banquet, which is coming up in a week from Friday.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It's a huge honor.
Yes. And
it'd be 300 people, and it's a fundraising thing, and fancy attire. I'll have to buy a tie. Anyway, but it's quite an honor, and I was looking forward to it. They said, oh, Paul, you can sell your book afterwards. And I said, I mean, that's great. I'd love to do that. But you know what? That's a very lonely little book out there all by itself, a little skinny book about men grief. So guess what? I just happen to have one here. I came up with a little sister for it called Remember When We, and it's Healing Reflections on Sorrow and Grief. And this book it's kind of what I wish I would have had when I was fresh grieving. Why? Because in it, it's just a little devotion, lots of white pages, white space, and all that, and it's just more of a reflectant thing. Because I kept hearing the same things over and over at these grief groups that I went to, and so I said, I'm going to just put them down in short paragraph form, read the whole thing in 20 minutes or something like that, or read it bit by bit as whatever you want, because they're all on different kind of related categories. There's a section or a page dedicated. I ran into a guy, he's probably in his 40s, He had never, his parents were still with him, his wife's parents were still with him, his kids were still with him. He hadn't lost any aunts or uncles or anything along the way. And no death in his life, pretty much, at that point. But guess what? The family dog died.
Oh, no.
Or it was needed to be put down, rather. And what happened was, he was torn up about it. And I get it. I have had dogs all my life. So I put a chapter in there about that, because, not even a chapter, but a page in there about that, because that's real grief to people, isn't it?
Yes, for kids.
Yeah, for kids.
Well,
so that's kind of my story, Michael. Any other questions you have for me?
Not really. We're actually at the end of the hour, half an hour here.
Okay.
So I want to say, is there anything you want to wrap up? Anything you want to talk about?
I think I've covered it all.
You have an event coming up.
I mentioned the gala, right?
With the retreat center you're talking about.
The what now?
Retreat center.
Oh, well, that is, we tried that, and I learned some things of how not to do a retreat for men. So that was in the past, and that one, we're restructuring that.
Okay, sounds good.
So, yeah.
I'd like to know more about it when you get things ready to restructure.
As it comes into focus, you will hear everything.
Sounds good.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Most appreciated. And thank you for everybody for being out there on Everyone's Got a Story. What's yours? My name is Michael Schmeeckle, and thank you.